Welcome to the Folktale Project. This is Dan Scholes. Today we have our final story from the southern states of North America. And this story comes to us from Macon, Georgia, and it's a tale of revenge. Revenge taken so sweetly by one who was wronged. This is 2 Lives for One. The place of Macon, Georgia, in the early part of this century was marked only by an inn. One of its guests was a man who had stopped there on the way to Alabama, where he had bought land. The girl who was to be his wife was to follow in a few days. In the morning, when he paid his reckoning, he produced a well-filled pocketbook, and he did not see the significant look that passed between 2 rough, black-bearded fellows who had also spent the night there, and who, when he set forth, mounted their horses and offered to keep him company. As they rode through the deserted village of Chillicothe, one of the twain engaged the traveler in talk while the other, falling a little behind, dealt him a blow with a loaded whip that unseated him. Divining their purpose, and lacking weapons for his own defense, he begged for mercy, and asked to be allowed to return to his bride-to-be, but the robbers had already made themselves liable to penalty, and 2 knife thrusts in the breast silenced his appeals. The money was secured. The body was dropped into a hollow where the wolves would be likely to find and mangle it, and the outlaws went on their way. Men of their class do not keep money long, and when the proceeds of the robbery had been wasted at cards and in drink, they separated. As in fulfillment of the axiom that a murderer is sure to revisit the scene of his crime, one of the men found himself at the Ockelmgee, a long time afterwards, in sight of the new town, Macon. In response to his hello, a skiff shot forth from the opposite shore, and, as it approached the bank, he felt a stir in his hair, and a touch of ice at his heart. For the ferryman was the victim of years ago. Neither spoke a word, but the criminal felt himself forced to enter the boat when the dead man waved his hand, and he was rowed across, his horse swimming beside the skiff. As the jar of the keel was felt on the gravel, he leaped out, urged his horse to the road, sprang to the saddle, and rushed away in an agony of fear that was heightened when a hollow voice called, "Stay! Stay!" After a little he slackened his pace, and a farmer who was standing at the roadside asked in astonishment, "How did you get across? There's a freshet, and the ferryman was drowned last night." With a new thrill he spurred his horse forward, and made no other halt until he reached the tavern, where he fell in a faint on the steps, for the strain was no longer to be endured. A crowd gathered, but he did not see it when he awoke. He only saw one pair of eyes that seemed to be looking into his innermost soul, the eyes of the man he had slain. With a yell of terror and of insane fury, he rushed upon the ghost and thrust a knife into his breast. The frenzy passed. It was no ghost that lay on the earth before him, staring up with sightless eyes. It was his fellow murderer, his own brother. That night, the assassin's body hung from a tree at the crossroads. And that is 2 Lives for One. a story of ghostly revenge in Macon, Georgia. And this story, man, I mean, they get what they have coming to them, don't they? The murderers. This is Dan Schultz from the Folktale Project. Don't forget that you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, Overcast, anywhere you like to get your podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter at Folktale Project. You can find us on Auto Radio, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, anywhere you like to listen. And you can always head over to folktaleproject.com, where you'll find a new story waiting for you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Next week, I'll be back with 3 new tales. As always, thank you so much for listening.